Today we got our first legendary weapon review for the final shape, and I wanted to kick things off with this very unique weapon, Summum Bonum. This is an arc wave frame sword. Yes, you heard that right, a wave frame, but a sword. It's a brand new archetype introduced in the final shape, and so far we've only seen it on two weapons, Summum Bonum and Ergo Sum, which is our exotic sword that you can get with random rolls. Today we're going to be going over how this new archetype works. We're going to be making some comparisons to other swords, as well as going over our new perks and god roll recommendations. Let's start by going over how this new archetype works though. Now, as mentioned, its intrinsic is a wave sword frame, which reads, heavy attacks deploy a shockwave uppercut and launches the user into the air. An immediate follow-up swing after the uppercut deploys a homing strike that aggressively seeks a target. Now let's first look at the wave on this thing. I'd say it's pretty comparable to like a special ammo wave frame grenade launcher at base. But remember, Bungie actually made a change where blast radius affects your wave length, as well as your width and height. So you can actually get it larger than the wave on our sword here. Not by a whole lot, but still. And it's certainly a lot smaller than a heavy wave frame grenade launcher, which is a bit disappointing to me. I would have liked for the wave to be bigger, considering this is a heavy weapon. It also eats up 4 ammo every heavy attack, but considering we have artifact mods that freely gives us sword ammo back, you'll be just fine. I think the real cool part about the sword though comes in the form of its follow-up attack. After launching the wave, you want to immediately do a follow-up swing, which will launch and track you towards an enemy and strike them, which the best part of this is that it uses no additional ammo. So it's pretty much a free extra attack. And the distance on this follow-up attack is pretty generous. It lunges you quite far. It's almost like built-in Eager's Edge, but I definitely wouldn't recommend using it as a movement tool, as you need a target to track to. Now against Carl here, our heavy wave attack is dealing 30,760 damage, and then our follow-up lunge is dealing 24,977 damage, for a combined total of 55,737. Now comparing this to some other heavy attacks, adaptive frame swords are doing 60,214 damage. Vortex frame heavy attacks are dealing 80,286 damage, and caster frame swords are dealing 74,930 damage per heavy attack. Now all of these were also tested with the same blade, that being Jagged Edge. And something else to remember is that all swords got a global damage buff of 7% at the beginning of the final shape. But as you can see here, our heavy attack damage is quite low compared to our other swords. The sword archetype isn't really meant to be used as a high DPS dealer though, just like wave frame grenade launchers, as they both are meant to be an ad clear weapon. Now that you know how this sword works, let's go over the rolls. In our third column, we have Strategist, Deconstruct, Unrelenting, Attrition Orbs, Duelist Trance, Relentless Strikes, and Tireless Blade. For our fourth column, we have Chaos Reshaped, which is our raid exclusive perk, and it's very strong. Vorpal Weapon, One for All, Surrounded, Whirlwind Blade, Bait and Switch, and Chain Reaction. Now I'm going to start in our fourth column. Let's talk about that new perk, Chaos Reshaped. It reads that this weapon gains bonus damage while in combat for an extended time. Remaining in combat for even longer rewards a larger damage bonus and periodically heals the wielder. Now this perk is extremely similar to Frenzy, but it's souped up a bit more. At base, our light attack against Carl is dealing 21,409 damage. Then once Chaos Reshaped procs, this goes up to 25,691 damage, which is a 20% increase overall. This is even better than Frenzy, and it takes roughly 12 seconds to activate, just like Frenzy. The difference is we have 20% more damage here with Chaos versus the 15% with Frenzy. Now we're also not going to get the increases in our handling and our reload speed, but that's all right. This is a sword. Then after 12 more seconds in combat, this goes up to ×2, and now we're dealing 28,902 damage. This is giving us a 35% increase in damage. And the last part of this perk reads that at ×2, the perk periodically heals us, which based on community research seems to be around 40 HP. Originally we said 30, but now it's being said that it's 40 HP every 7.5 seconds. Now as for the enhanced version, this reduces the amount of time needed to get to ×2 from 24 seconds to 23 seconds. Definitely not a big bump here. Hot damn, Bungie. Make it count for something. Now as you can see, this perk is pretty cool. You get a larger damage buff than Frenzy, and it also has healing baked into it. Now I'm not necessarily saying that this is the go-to perk. I'm mainly pointing out that Chaos Reshaped is a great perk, especially for your other raid weapons. Now as for the rest of our fourth column perks, you have a lot of things that increases damage. Vorpal, which is only a 10% increase against mini bosses, and vehicles. The enhanced version just gives you +5 guard resistance. We've got Surrounded, which also gives our swords a 35% increase in damage when within 15 meters of 3 enemies. And the enhanced version cranks this up to 41.75%. Not necessarily a hard perk to proc here on a sword, guys. I mean, you're pretty much always in close quarter combat. Then you got Bait and Switch, which is a 30% increase in damage for 10 seconds after dealing damage with all other equipped weapons. The enhanced version cranks up that buff duration to 11 seconds. rounds. Whirlwind Blade is also here, where Rapid Sword Strikes increases the weapon's damage for a short duration, but guarding ends this effect. Essentially, powered hits will grant a 3% increase in damage for 3.5 seconds, and this stacks up to 10 times, capping out at 30% increase in damage. As for the enhanced version, this allows the buff to last for 4 seconds. Now, Whirlwind Blade actually has a play, at least on our DPS swords, when you pair it with someone who's rocking Ergo Sum in Wolfpack rounds. Because of the Wolfpack rounds and the emissions that are affecting your swords, you can instantly get the ×10 Whirlwind Blade. However, this is not a DPS sword. This is an ad clear sword. And in my opinion, I actually feel like a lot of these damage perks aren't really necessary on this sword. I'm looking at it as more of an ad clear weapon, which is odd because we use our heavy weapons for chunking down high health targets. So I get it. It's in an odd position. But a perk that is actually really easy to proc on this thing is One for All. This gives us a 35% increase in damage for 10 seconds after hitting 3 separate targets. Now this is really easy to do. You've got a wave frame for a sword. You also have a follow-up attack. So even if you do only hit 2 enemies with the initial wave, the follow-up hit can hit the 3rd enemy. Now the enhanced version increases that buff duration to 11 seconds. Now the perk I ended up gravitating to the most though, considering that this is an ad clear weapon, the perk that makes the most sense here is Chain Reaction. This allows the weapon to create elemental damage explosions on each final blow, and that's from the base sword or the wave frame. Both attacks, guys. And the enhanced version of Chain Reaction gives swords plus 20 guard endurance. Now, Chain Reaction did receive a nerf on our special weapons, but it received a buff on our heavy weapons. Our AoE on heavies is about the same as before, but the explosion now deals 30% more damage. And this explosion was dealing 9,990 damage against red bars, or it would just flat out kill them and wouldn't give a damage number. And I will say the explosion didn't seem as dramatic as say something like Hula Baloo, but it was working. And as far as the damage testing here at Carl was getting hit by the explosion at around 5,202 damage. That is the 4th column perk that I actually ended up crafting and liking the most. It felt good to use. And again, I'm using this as an ad clear sword. And the question is, what do we pair with this in our 3rd column? And we tried out Deconstruct because the perk actually grew on me last season, specifically on special and heavy weapons, but it got a heavy nerf. You see, Deconstruct reads that dealing sustained damage grants bonus damage against vehicles and constructs and refunds ammunition. Damage with primary ammo or against constructs provides additional progress. Now, this used to generate ammo out of thin air, but it was actually changed to instead refill from reserves, which was a big nerf. And this is even more odd on a sword because swords don't reload. So guys, it's kind of a wasted perk unless you're trying to go for that increased construct damage. Now, Relentless Strikes is always a great one for swords, as landing 3 light attack hits within a short time grants sword ammo, which is 1 ammo for 3 light hits within 2 seconds of each. And the enhanced version increases the allowed time between hits. This normally would be great on other swords, as you're most likely going to be utilizing the light attack, but here we're utilizing the heavy. So the perk I actually found I was utilizing the most was Tireless Blade, as this grants sword ammo for every other powered sword kill. The enhanced version allowing a chance for additional ammo to be provided, which works on both our wave frame attack and if we end up getting the kill from the lunge line attack. Now you can go for things that help with survivability. Unrelenting is here, where rapidly defeating targets triggers health regeneration. Guardians and powerful combatants count as more than 1 kill, and upon defeating enough targets, this starts health regeneration and restores 65 HP or 70 HP when enhanced. I like this perk, as it only takes about 3 kills against rank and file enemies to proc that healing. You also have Attrition Orbs, which seems to generate an overpower every 10 hits. I don't mind this on things like Falling Guillotine, where I'm using it for sustained damage, but definitely not something I was liking here. I think for me, the combos I like the most were Tireless Blade for regenerating ammo or Unrelenting for that health regeneration. You can pair that with either Chain Reaction to amp up that ad clear or One for All for that extra damage. Personally, the role that I settled on, guys, was Tireless Blade and Chain Reaction. One perk to help with ad clear even further, and the other to help with ammo economy, which the explosions from Chain Reaction would actually proc Tireless Blade. You combine that with the artifact mods, guys, that helps your swords and gives you back ammo. You pretty much can have ammo up at all times. Now, as for the rest of our setup, I originally went with Jagged Edge, as this gave us that +4 to our impact, but it does give us -4 ammo. You may want to use something that gives you extra ammo, considering that this is an ad clear weapon. We're not trying to get the most DPS out here. Timber Edge gives you +1 impact and +2 ammo. Honed Edge is just a flat +2 impact, and Enduring Blade is a whopping +7 ammo, but of course it hurts your impact by -2. Hungry Edge is +4 ammo. I personally would recommend going with a more ammo-friendly blade, even though you do have a lot of things here assisting with getting your ammo back. If you're doing back-to-back heavy attacks, you will go through it pretty quick. As for our guard, Swordmaster's Guard is always the way to go. You got that +10 charge rate, the +10 guard resistance, and the +40 guard endurance. The main reason why we go with this one, guys, is for that increase in charge rate, since ideally, we want to get as many heavy attack waves as possible. Now, this also takes us to our origin trait. All of our Salvation Edge weapons come with Collective Purpose. This is where you gain bonus range and and handling when near allies. Bows receive faster draw time, and swords receive faster charge rates. Now, the effect scales with the number of nearby allies. Now, this is actually great for swords here, as I found its charge rate was pretty slow. Unfortunately, I don't have solid numbers on this yet. This is something we still need to do more testing on, but this does stack up to 5 times. And even when playing with only 2 teammates, this order trait was actually quite nice, and I noticed it taking effect. What this really means, guys, is that if you're playing with a fire team, especially like a 6-man fire team or even the 12-man fire team in Excision, this is something that you can greatly take advantage of without the need for something like Loosened Blade. Now, with perks out of the way, how does this sword actually feel? I really like it, guys. It's a unique play style. It's something new that Bungie's trying to do, and I gotta always give them credit for bringing us unique stuff. We've got some good artifact mods for swords, but at the same time, I don't think this sword is going to be meta by any means. It's fun to use, especially the wave frame attack with the follow-up lunge attack. But would you use this over a special wave frame grenade launcher? Probably not. And you're definitely not going to use it over other swords for damage phases. And we literally use swords in the second encounter of Salvation's Edge. They're good. In the right encounters, swords can cook, but this won't be one of the swords you use. I would recommend trying it out though. Put on some ammo finder mods and some scav mods and just see how it feels for you. And make sure you're rocking things like Overload Sword, which is going to amp up that damage even more in charged environments. You've got Blade Stamina, where rapidly defeating combatants with a sword refunds your ammo, which from the testing here actually works with Tireless Blade. Those things stack together. And then column 5 of our artifact mod has Argent Blade, which amps up our damage and consumes an armor charge at the same time, which is like a 15% increase in damage. It also greatly increases our charge rates. And when I say greatly, like a lot. Like at base, it takes 62 frames to get your charge back. Then Argent Blade, it only takes 21 frames. So you have free artifact mods here, guys, that are definitely promoting swordplay. The only issue I have with this is that in our current arsenal, we have so many things that can clear a room out. Like whether it's a single punch or a grenade or a primary weapon, we have some crazy ad clearing weapons, which is why we're mainly utilizing heavies for doing what they're supposed to do. Deal heavy damage, chew down high health targets. I wouldn't mind though if Bungie overcommits here to this archetype and really amps up the AoE damage. Like make it stupid. Make that wave 3 times thicker and we just go through there and rip with a single wave that wipes everything. And if that ever happened, Summum Bonum is going to be positioned perfectly to take full advantage of that. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.